The following program is underwritten by Barlow's Clam Shack, located at 856 Scenic Highway in Bourne. Barlow's Clam Shack, where the seafood is always fresh.
Hi, this is Kathy Fox Alfano, and welcome to Upper Cape Spotlight. Today, we are interviewing 3 of the candidates for Bourne's Select Board. One of the candidates, Dan Degan, could not be with us. Today, right now, we have Jeanne Azarovitz. Is that right?
Perfect.
Okay. Welcome, Jeanne, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, congratulations on your candidacy. We'd like to get to know you better before we vote on May 21st. Which is next Tuesday. First, what drew you to run for the Select Board?
I've been getting more and more engaged with the Select Board's activities. Over the last 7 years with the Planning Board, I was always involved with town politics and the bylaws and town meetings and so forth, and learning the procedures, Robert's rules, town meeting rules. And I realized that I can do this. Many years ago when I first ran for Planning Board, Steve Mealy said to me that he had attended about 120 meetings a year to be in a Select Board.
Oh my.
Or Select Men at that time.
Wow.
And I thought, that is a lot. That's a huge commitment, and besides the awesome responsibility of the position. So last year I was quite busy with my oldest son Jacob and his commuting to Four Seas, and this year it was a total turnaround. I was laid off. And I had more free time, and I said, okay, well now I'm at a point where I think I can handle those 120 plus meetings a year, I think at this point.
Wow.
With tasks.
Wow, that is commendable.
Then when I heard that MacDonald was possibly considering not running again, I thought this is a good time to go.
How would your friends describe you?
Talkative, full of energy, sometimes exhausting. And always with my hands in the dirt. That's my place of peace, is outside in the yard and gardening.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Okay. So what experience do you bring to the board?
Some of the things I've touched on already with the Planning Board and the meetings. Many years of volunteering, understanding the worthwhile value that brings to the position of committees and in any volunteer capacity, even just helping out at the school or helping out anywhere, seniors, so on. And I feel like these skills and understanding the guardrails, the lessons I've learned over time, can help me bring a lot to the position and encourage me to continue going forward. I don't get discouraged easily. So
what from the Planning Board can you bring to the Select Board?
My knowledge of how town functions, understanding the importance of doing your homework and your research and being as prepared as you can for every meeting. Trying to get more involved with planning. That did come up at candidate night. Strategic planning with the local comprehensive plan. We had an action plan. Asking up for what I need to do my volunteer position. You're not in town hall all the time, but getting to town hall, getting to the planning department, even just emailing, reaching out to people to have questions answered, so you can be as prepared as possible. And I think a lot of that is crucial with being a Select Board member.
What accomplishment are you most proud of?
Honestly, the Buzzards Bay Park, the look of Main Street has changed so much.
Sure.
When I was a young person in Falmouth and I used to take the bus to Boston and come in and out of Buzzards Bay, I remember the theater and the coffee shops and what was there, and it was sad for me, not even as a Bourne resident yet, to see some of that leaving and losing that Commerce Drive on Main Street, and Falmouth was just getting cuter and cuter.
Right.
And how can we do some of that? And I now go into Buzzards Bay, to Mahoney's on Main or somewhere on a Friday night, and if it's nice, and you see people on the park and people walking on the street, and just that drive to Main Street and the walkability of it is something I'm proud of.
What do you think are the most critical issues facing Bourne today and in the near future?
Well, obviously water is a huge concern for everybody. All the water, storm water, wastewater, blue water, gray water. The changes that are coming to the town as far as the bridges, transportation, the challenges that we now have with a large workforce that's going back and forth over those bridges every day, and our kids that are going back and forth over those bridges. Turnover with town staff and turnover with positions in some of the boards and committees that are supporting, the lack of people in those committees. There's a lot of, and housing, there's a lot of obstacles that we have to work with day in, day out.
And if you're elected, how would you address these issues?
Again, with trying to face what is not just, I don't want to run around just putting out fires. I'd like to have an agenda that's full of things that we can continue making progress with. And one of those things with planning board, it seems like we try and make room on the agenda to continue with action plans and things like that. Sometimes you can get bogged down with applications and reviewing, and that's keeping up with the work, but we have to somehow keep all the balls juggled and do all the work at once, which is going to be a challenge.
Bourne, I believe, has the second highest tax rate on the Cape. Why? And what would you do to lower that?
Bourne, growing pains, I guess. When we first moved from Falmouth to Bourne, that was not the case. Things have changed. We've had a lot of people move into town that need services. There's valuable services that I think are really valuable for the town, such as the in-house trash pickup and some of these town services that we have. And I feel like people are always asking for more, which makes it super challenging. So we have to balance this out with the economy and trying to bring more dollars in and the revenue. And just taking a really hard look at the rates and who's being affected and what we can do to help people out and maintain that growth.
As far as I know, we do not have an economic development committee. And that seems to me something, people who are focused just on that would be a wise thing. Do you agree?
Yeah.
I think the selectmen think they do that now, but they have so much else to do.
Yeah, well, there is, I was a part of that Bourne Economic and Financial Development Corporation. That was a nonprofit created by Charlie Baker to drive commerce to towns and so forth. Other towns have done more with those groups and committees. I know there's been action in the past to try and bring some commerce and so forth, but it is we have a lot of committees. We have positions that need to be filled, and then we have some committees that aren't as active as they used to be. And I think there's also needs for diversity in other issues. So it's one of those things we should really look at is working towards shaping some of these committees, working with these committees themselves, getting feedback from the members and seeing what else they'd like to do. And maybe we can see a way to put something together.
Would you support having a select board liaison on each of the committees?
Well, the select board is active now. If you look at the website, it shows what committees that they're a part of. Mm-hmm. I think being involved in the committees is super important for bringing information back to the select board and being engaged. I don't want it to be where we're dominating those meetings. Right. I don't want to always, if I'm in a committee meeting, I'm there for listening and hearing the conversation, not necessarily to give my opinion and do too much, per se. And I also would like to see more joint meetings, if there could be, whenever possible, so that all the members can get together and discuss important topics.
So Jeanne, tell us what's going on up at the Joint Base.
Well, we just had a meeting last week about Joint Base Cape Cod and the changes that are coming. There's land, as we heard at the One Cape Summit last year, that's going to become available
for housing
from the state. That was pretty exciting. We also need to be concerned about the machine gun range, which is troubling. I've lived near the base for so many years. I know the sonic booms and I heard all the sounds, but I can't imagine that's just too much activity for such a small critical area over our aquifer, and it's just not in keeping with what we need to be doing out there either. And it was also exciting to hear about the possibility of Bourne maybe getting some of the land for housing. We could use it for housing, transportation, for evacuation concerns, for parking cars away from the water and getting people off the roads that need to get off the Cape, wastewater treatment, some expansion with iSwim, and some of the things that we can do out there with waste as well. So it was pretty exciting hearing about all the changes that are coming to the base and the fact that they're more open to working with local officials at town, at events and getting our opinion and having a seat at the table. So we just have to keep pushing to make sure that we have a voice and we're being kept up with the activities and we're in the loop.
Who would you like to see housed up there?
Well, we need housing for veterans. We need housing, workforce housing. We need workforce housing and veterans is top of mind, because we have too many people that are driving on and off over the bridges every day to work, that want to live in this community, and we need more young people in our community. Really, we need to have a full, robust community of all ages. Yeah.
So tell us, Jeanne, why should we vote for you?
I feel like I have the experience and I have the time commitment. I have a track record of not being one who's just there for my personal agenda, and I don't waste a lot of time going on and on about things that we can't control. I try and be as fair as possible, and I want to reach out to the community and let people know they can reach out to me, and I will work for the people of Bourne, everybody, on both sides of the canal, no matter where you are, to maintain that connection in town, and hope we all work together for the town's sake.
Great. Well, best of luck, Jeanne.
Thank you very much.
Now we have another candidate for Bourne Select Board. This is Jack MacDonald. Welcome, Jack, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your candidacy. We would like to get to know you better before voting on Tuesday, May 21st. First, what drew you to run for Select Board?
I've always had an interest in the goings-on in town, and since I was a young man, people have always said to me, Jack, you might be good at that. You should give this a shot. Think about doing this someday. And I've always put it on the back burner. I've always been an activist and around, but this is the first time I've run for elected position, and I'm giving it a shot, and yeah, I think I can help Bourne. I think I have, and I want to continue some good work.
So tell us, how would your friends describe you?
Oh, that's a curveball.
Not really.
I think they would.
Not supposed to.
Well, no, it's not. I think they would think that I'm a serious person, but I also have a fun side, that I see a forest for the trees. I think friends would think that I'm perhaps bold, that I'm a risk taker, that I stand up for things that I think are important, and yeah, I think they know that, you know, I'm a committed family man and a caring person.
Okay.
Yeah.
What experience do you bring to the board?
Well, I bring experience. I was a member of the Bourne Historic Commission for a number of years. I helped develop and implement the Bourne demolition delay bylaw. This was all in the aftermath of me watching another historic home get demolished without any reverence in Bourne, and by golly, we we got fired up and we got that bylaw into action. So that was a very good experience for me. I got to saw a lot of the process of town government in that effort. I've been the past president of the Bourne Historic Society. I did like 1.5 terms is that, and that was sort of a result of me advocating for the preservation of yet another historic Bourne structure, the Sagamore Information Booth. And we led a small coalition to pick that up and move it from the Sagamore Rotary, which was going to be turned into the flyover that we know now, and we moved it to the Bourne Historic Society. And that was a big accomplishment for me, and it reaps rewards today. I see that it's an active community over there, and it enabled I want to call it a lighthouse. It's not a lighthouse, but the windmill, the Grover Cleveland windmill, to be turned into a great artist studio. So, yeah.
So my next question is, what accomplishments are you most proud of? But it sounds like that's it. Or do you have others that you'd like to talk about?
Those are highlights, yeah. Moving not only the one information booth, but the two. Okay. And, you know, certainly the historic nature of the structure, that it was over 100 years old, and who built it and why it was built was important. But what is as important to me was that, to me, they represent the culture of Bourne, and they were a place where these booth officials were Samaritans in the greeters of Cape Cod. And that's as important to me as the structures themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most critical issues facing Bourne today and in the near future?
Well, in no particular order, I believe the mental health of Bourne residents is a critical issue. Mm-hmm. We as a society have endured a lot. You know, who in Bourne was standing on their front porch, as I was, when they heard the roar of the jets flying over in response to 9/11. There was that. We just endured a coronavirus, which, you know, decimated families and networks and the community. And we're slowly putting it back together, but it wasn't that long ago. And so I'm attuned to the grief and the loss and the tragedy of society. And I'm concerned and care about Bourne residents, and wanted to make that part of my messages in this campaign. You know, the other things, of course, are the Bourne bridges. I want to make sure that we represent Bourne as the state and federal agencies attempt to, you know, plow into town yet again and, you know, do what they do. So I would remain vigilant on that aspect. There's so many important issues going on. There's too many to list, and all of them are connected. So those are two that come to mind.
Okay. Well, if elected, how would you address those issues?
Well, I would, you know, attempt to be, in terms of the mental health and the suicide issues, I think just by talking about it helps. And I'm doing it right now by bringing it up and being able to be a voice for it. Just talking about these things reduces the stigma. Now, there are other ways to do this, and the Select Board has done some of it. In September, they, you know, promoted that September was Suicide Awareness Month. I'm all for that. May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Right.
And as a Select Board member, I would make sure that my radar was in tune to this, and not be afraid to promote it and talk about it. You know? Yeah.
Are you aware of the monies that they've gotten for the Substance Abuse Coalition? With, you know, quite a bit of money came into the town. Right. Are you working with that at all?
I haven't been working with it, but as a Select Board member, I'm going to jump in. Mm-hmm. You know, this is a new gig for this guy, but I will roll up my sleeves and find out about this, because I too am also have been in the recovery networks that in Bourne. So I have sort of an insider's, upside downers view of some of these.
Were you at the opening
worlds.
of Fishing for a Mission?
No.
Okay, that's over in Buzzards Bay.
Yeah.
And it's to help veteran suicide.
Right.
Yeah, so
Well-
that's something you should definitely look into.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Bourne has, I believe, the second highest tax rate on the Cape now.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And what would you do to alleviate that?
I don't know why. We have a very competent finance committee. We have a very competent town administrator. I don't know why it is. I can only tell you my personal experience. And as a member of the Historic Commission, just as an example, the roof was leaking. We kind of thought we needed a new roof. Well, we put in a grant for over 100
Is this the building on Keene Street?
on Keene Street,
Okay.
right?
Right.
We advocated, and we got awarded a CPC grant to replace the whole roof, but we hadn't really gone out to bid. And in that process, we talked to some competent, qualified slate roofers who said, you don't need a whole roof. It just needs maintenance. It needs flashing repairs and these shingles repaired. But slate roofs last for 500 years.
Yes,
They're
yes.
in Europe. The Romans put up these slate roofs that are still standing. Well,
Right.
I addressed members of the board and said, we don't have to do the whole roof. And they said, Jack, we've got the money. Let's just spend it. Let's do the whole thing. And to me, it just sort of blindsided me. But it opened my eyes to perhaps there's spending in Bourne that isn't necessary. And who are the overseers of all these large contracts and requests, and are they really needed? I will be acutely attuned to this, and this is one of the lessons I'm bringing to this campaign.
Are there committees that you think we should have in Bourne to help that sort of process?
No, I don't know. I think we're pretty well covered with committees. Nothing comes to mind.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, right.
Tell us what you think about what's going on with the Joint Base in regards to Bourne.
Everything. It's continually in flux. I know the base. One of my first memories is getting off a school bus at one of the school buildings out there and having Hamilton Whiting pull me out from underneath the bus seat and into the class out there. And those buildings are all gone. The Otis that I knew growing up is completely changed.
Right.
It continues to change. The names change. The physical plants change. Bourne needs to obviously keep in the loop about what's going on out there, but I'm not sure how we are represented. Are we represented enough? It seems to me that Bourne gets pushed around a lot and maybe plays second fiddle to the Mass Maritime, to the Joint Base Cape Cod, to the Cape Cod Canal projects. I will look at that as a select board.
Would you look into the pilot programs? Do you know what that is?
No, I'm not familiar.
Payment in lieu of taxes. Payment in lieu of taxes.
Payment?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a program. But
Okay.
again, I don't think we take advantage of it enough, and that's something you could consider. But
Okay.
what I was talking about with the base is there's two big things happening at the base that directly affect our town. One, I'm sure you heard about the machine gun range.
Yes,
that
of
that
course.
is back again.
Right.
Sitting on top of our sole source aquifer.
Right. Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Right. I'm against it. Yeah. I believe that one of the Joint Base Cape Cod is an environmental gem. It's sort of a lot of untouched open space there, and I know it's prime habitat for endangered species.
Right.
And I believe that anything I can do to promote, preserve, and protect any open space, either in Bourne or in the world, is where my efforts will be concerned. Yeah.
The other big issue right now is that the governor has told the base to, as I say, cough up some land. And there were meetings last week about that, that there are 2 parcels that they are looking at using for housing.
Right.
And that becomes a big issue because they're all in Bourne. So what kind of housing would you like to see created at the base?
I would defer to our housing specialists, and we have some very competent people in Bourne. Sue Ross comes to mind. But I would support housing in any shape, way, or form, as long as it didn't take away a significant portion of this open space and conservation land. I do some school bus driving on the side, and I have been in the base and in the neighborhoods there, and I've driven the school children around in there, and it's
Are there
it's
many
a
children
wonderful, yeah, there are. It's a wonderful community, and I think the base might be a great place for some more housing. And they talk about temporary housing. I'm not sure if the governor's initiative is in order to address that, but I welcome the immigrant and refugee community to our town. And if this is also another way to do it, then I'm all for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jack, tell us, why should we vote for you?
I think you should vote for me. Well, one, because I believe the historic preservation part of Bourne has taken second fiddle to progress, in that for a long time that it hasn't had a seat at the table on the leadership level, such as select board. So I come in as Bourne history buff and bring that, and hopefully, I know it will improve the cultural importance. And when I was growing up, the history of Bourne was ingrained in me by my grandparents. I want to bring some of that to the select board. You should also vote for me because I have a lot of friends and family that aren't registered to vote. A lot of my peer group is, I don't want to say in the shadows, but I don't see them represented as much as I believe they should be. So this is another reason to vote for me, because I believe the town will get another valuable voice.
All right. Thank you so much, Jack.
You're welcome.
Good luck on May 21st.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
You're welcome.
Hi, and now we have our next candidate for Select Board, MJ Mary Jane Mastrangelo. Welcome, Mary Jane. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on your candidacy. We'd like to get to know you better before voting on Tuesday, May 21st. First, what initially drew you to run for Select Board?
Oh, thanks, Kathy. I had been on the Finance Committee for many years, and as a Finance Committee member, I feel I had an important role in advising town meeting about what was happening, what was before them, the implications, making sure we had balanced budgets, and being a check and balance on the Select Board. But what I really felt when I decided to run was that if I wanted to be able to shape the direction of the town of Bourne and have a say in what goals and priorities should be, that I really needed to take that active role as a select board member to shape policy and to set the goals and priorities for the town. So that's why I ran.
How would your friends describe you?
Oh my goodness. I think they would describe me as dedicated, as a hard worker, as really caring for the town of Bourne, and really caring about people. One of the things that's really important to me as I sit on the board is understanding how change made or change not made will influence the lives of the people in Bourne. And there are some top things that we have been concerned with over the years. The cost of housing makes it difficult. Controlling the tax rate, so that people can afford to live here. These are the things that the select board really has to take into consideration.
So how long have you been on the board now?
This is the end of my first term, so I've been there 3 years.
Okay.
Before that, I was on the finance committee for, I think, 11 years, maybe
Okay.
longer.
Okay.
Maybe
And,
longer.
and do you feel in your first term, do you feel like you've been able to, is it something, what you expected it to be?
I think it's really hard to have the expectation of what being on the select board is. We meet probably more than we should because we have so many things that we have to do that are regulatory, licensing, approvals, people that need us to approve their event. But it's really hard to fit everything into the meetings that we have, generally once a week. But what I have found is that when the board works together as a board and tries to build consensus, that together we can get a lot accomplished. And we have accomplished a lot in the last 3 years.
What accomplishments are you most proud of?
Well, we have had balanced budgets every year since I've been on the select board, and that's 3 years of balanced budgets in a period of inflation that we've had to make. It's had to be carefully managed, and we've had to be clear about our priorities. We haven't been able to improve services in terms of adding more services or adding more personnel, but we have been able to maintain services. I will say a caveat in not adding personnel. We have been able to bring our police department up into almost full staffing now, which we've been working on since 2004.
Wow.
And our police department has done a really great job of recruiting. And other departments on the Cape especially, but statewide are having difficulty with hiring police officers. We've done a really good job with recruitment and have been able to hire a lot. And I was at a police swearing in this morning for 2 new officers.
Wow, wonderful. Okay. What do you think are the most critical issues facing Bourne today and in our near future?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's financial stability, there's resiliency, there's sustainability, but bringing it down, boiling it down to what can we do now and what do we have to do now. One of the main things that we're facing is developing our comprehensive wastewater management plan. If we want to preserve our water quality, if we want to keep Bourne the place that it is, the comprehensive wastewater management plan is really important. And we started this over 3 years ago. While we started working on it, DEP started creating new Title V regulations. So as you know, we put our plan on hold because we didn't want to create a plan until we knew what the new regulations would be. That has happened. We've sort of kicked back in gear. And Marlene and I, the town administrator, have talked about using the model that the board has been using for marijuana policy to work on the comprehensive wastewater management plan. And I'll tell you what that means.
I was going to say, that's an interesting mix.
So, the town meeting voted to allow marijuana into town last November. And first we had to wait for the Attorney General to approve all our bylaws. which happened in March. But in the meantime, the select board started working on policy. We need a way to approve licenses. We need to know what our license process is. We need to know what our social equity plan is. The Cannabis Control Commission put a lot of regulations in that we have to follow in order to be a community that's in compliance. So many communities had to go back and relook at the way they were doing things, but we needed to create a whole system. So the board has been meeting in separate meetings on Wednesday afternoons for an hour and a half at a time. We've met pretty consistently every 2 to 3 weeks since the middle of February, and we've made a lot of progress. So we are getting close to being able to roll out our licensing application period that will allow businesses that are interested in having a marijuana facility in town to file an application. We're planning on having an open application period, and then to evaluate all of the people that put in their applications to see what the best fits of Bourne is. When I talk about the same model, is a workshop model separate from our regular meetings on another afternoon or evening when we can focus a concentrated amount of time to work through the issues that have to be worked through. Marijuana was very complex, and the comprehensive wastewater management plan will be complex also. And if we want to be prepared to go to town meeting in the fall with a plan that's going to carry us for the next 20 years, we need to really put some hard work into workshops to do that.
Is this a public meeting or just the select board?
No, well, all meetings of the select board are public meetings.
Okay.
So they are posted public meetings. We call them a workshop, which allows the board to have internal discussions, but we also allow input from the public. And we've had a lot of attendance of interested parties in our marijuana workshops, and a lot of those people have expertise or have been in the marijuana business and have been able to give us feedback based on their experience and what we're thinking about doing. So I think it's been a really good process, and I expect that it will be good for the comprehensive wastewater management plan also.
All right. What do you think about the other sort of issues hitting Bourne right now? We've got the bridges, we have housing up at the base. How are you involved with those?
Well, there are not almost enough hours to the day. There's a bridge open house this afternoon, which I'm going to when I leave here, and there was a Joint Base Cape Cod housing open house last Wednesday that I went to. So outside of the select board meetings, there are a lot of meetings that I personally go to be educated on the issues that are facing Bourne. The bridges, of course, are very important. One of the things that I think has been really good the last couple years, and we had is working out the way that we can communicate with MassDOT.
Right.
You know, when we started with public hearings, MassDOT was having a public hearing and they're presenting us with all the information that they had decided was what they were going to do. We hadn't worked out a way to communicate throughout the process. And that's been developing. One of the things that Senator Sue Moran did, State Senator Moran, was she set up stakeholder meetings during construction. So when it started last spring, when we had the really difficult Sagamore Bridge construction, they started meeting every other week to talk about the issues. How do we manage traffic? What's coming up? And we put that in place again last fall for the Bourne Bridge repairs, and this spring for the Bourne Road repairs. And what it has done is allowed us to communicate in the moment. It allows the people in town, Chief Aesop, to say, you know, I need to know this in advance, or have you thought about that? We have talked a lot about signage, and we're dealing now with the new striping on the rotary, and I think it's working fairly well. The different representatives of Bourne that have been on these calls is the importance of signage before you get to the bridge. And we talked a lot about that because it's important that people are going to get in the right lane before they get on the bridge. And there is currently some small signage that says, be left for this or right for that. But we have advocated for more signage. However, and for signage on the bridge itself, markings, that's outside of the project scope. So the rotary, it was clearly a rotary project, and this was the scope of the project. So adding this signage and adding these other markings, MassDOT has listened to us. They have, if you saw the pictures of how the Rotary works, they got public relations people involved in explaining how it's going to work, and they're working on the signage. Little bits. Having good communication is the key element, and it will be key element for the bridges, and it's something we've got going for us now. And I could go on about the housing. The housing is the same thing. It's the communication. The communication for the base housing is not just federal and state communication, it's local and regional communication as well. And so when I was at the open house last week, I talked about that. I saw Mark Forrest at the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders meeting this last Friday. He talked about that. So keeping the local leaders on the same page as to how we're going to make this work. And there's so many things to talk about.
Yes.
What type of housing? Housing for, affordable workforce, veterans, senior. What kind of housing are we going to put there? What are we going to do about transportation? Should we get a rail spur that goes to that so there's commuter rail available to those people? They're the people that live there. What kind of businesses? Is it going to be a village system where they'll have their own services local? What are the services for the town? What is the town going to be expected? Are we going to provide fire services, police services? These are all questions that we need to talk about going forward, and some sort of stakeholder committee that's going to be able to work throughout the process is going to be really important.
Will it be Bourne land or stay state land?
I don't know the answer to that question, but from my discussions, the state, the land has gone to DCAM, which is the state deciding, whether they keep the land or not. When DCAM has surplus land, it goes to mass development. Who is going to be the entity? They talked about some things like regional housing authorities, but what's important to me as a select board member from a tax perspective is this going to be a payment in lieu of taxes, or if it's going to be property taxes? If it's going to be payment in lieu of taxes, how are we going to make sure that's fair? At Devon's, they have people living at the Devon's, and they are paying student per student for the students that go in the various towns around. So these are all huge discussions that Bourne really needs to be involved in to understand how this is going to affect our community.
How do you feel about the machine gun range up at the base?
I am concerned about the machine gun range. Recently, Andrew Gottlieb wrote a letter from APCC that the select board in Bourne is going to have to discuss whether we want to write a similar letter. I am concerned that there are some indications that the base plans on moving ahead, even though there have been EPA concerns raised. I think this is something really to monitor. We've been dealing with the plume issues for so many years. We do not want to start a whole new concern. And that's not to say I don't support the military. I do. I just want to make sure that whatever we do there is going to protect our environment, and that they've looked at all options as to what the best place is for how it can best serve the military and preserve the environment of the Cape.
Bourne has, I believe, the second highest tax rate right now on the Cape. Why? And what would you do to alleviate that?
This is a difficult issue to explain to people. It is not the tax rate that really can be measured. It is what is the average tax to the resident. So in Bourne, if our median house is taxed at $542,000 and our tax rate is $8 and something, we have very close to the same average tax burden as Chatham, who has a very low tax rate of $4 to $5, but their average house is over $1 million. So the cost of the average house is a big indicator of the tax rate. The other thing on the Cape you have to notice is, first of all, we have more year-round housing, which means more year-round services. Second of all, we provide fire and ambulance services through our town budget. Barnstable does not.
Oh, okay.
Barnstable, they have fire districts, and so they pay a separate tax above their property tax for their tax services. Bourne is very interesting. We get free trash pickup at our curb. So if you do a really good analysis of the tax rate in Bourne, we're actually pretty competitive when you include all the services that we get included on our tax rate and the cost of our property.
Great. Okay, and finally, MJ, why should we vote for you?
Well, I would hope that people would vote for me because they feel I've done a good job and they want me to continue doing a good job for them. And that's why I'm running. I have started work on many initiatives and I want to finish that work. I want to continue to work for the people of Bourne, to make Bourne even a better community than it already is, which is a really great community. So that's it. I'm not done and I want to keep working. So please vote for me.
Okay, well, best of luck on Tuesday, May 21st. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. So we've had 3 of the 4 candidates talk to us about their goals and what would they like to do as select board. Our election, as I said, is Tuesday, May 21st. In small election, your vote counts so much, so please get out and vote. Watch all the interviews and decide who you think would lead Bourne best into the future. This is Kathy Fox Alfano for a special edition of Upper Cape Spotlight. Keep watching. Thank you.
The preceding program was underwritten by Barlow's Clam Shack, located at 856 Scenic Highway in Bourne. Barlow's Clam Shack, where the seafood is always fresh.